So I think the community is there. It's not that big, for example, than in Asia or Berlin and stuff like that, but it's definitely growing. So hi everyone, my name is Bogdan Habic. I'm from Belgrade, Serbia, and I work with the Serbian-based team. There's 5 of us working on Tenderly, which is now the more complex way to say it is the blockchain alerting and monitoring platform. But we basically take care that people get notified when stuff of interest to them happens on the blockchain. So that's kind of what we do, and I'm one of the co-founders and the developer there. So.
Nice.
Full-time for 2 years back. I did follow it along. It was interesting to follow, but I thought it was a bubble like a lot of people. And then once it clicked in my head, I slowly started working on like side projects and then hackathons with my friends. And then afterwards, we started doing like a part-time job and then slowly transitioned into a full-time job. And then from that, we started our own company in this space as well. So we're really doubling down that this is going to succeed. Okay, so my first, like what people call job was in third grade of high school, and it was actually a programming gig. I was doing, I was trying, I didn't succeed very well, implementing an online library basically. So that was like the first paid job I had.
Oh, man.
So kind of created. I was hired to finish it. Another guy started it, so I was hired to finish it, and that was like my first paid gig. Does the 5-year-old know what a ledger is? No. So basically, let's imagine that you have a bunch of people writing down stuff in their notebook, and then every time somebody says they did something, everyone in the world writes it down in their own notebook. So you can actually check in multiple notebooks if that thing actually happened with it. So for personal life, I actually don't know the correct answer to that. But I guess people around me is for that, but also it's a similar answer for business. So before this, I was also in a community-driven industry as well, and for Ethereum and blockchain and everything else here, I think the main motivator is the community. I mean, when you see people building so much stuff and trying to reinvent a bunch of things in a good way, that somehow drives you forward to participate and give the value back more or less. So I think that's like the main inspiration. For blockchain, I think the biggest barrier to entry is a bunch of terms. I think it's not that scary once you have someone explain it to you in, let's say, an hour, then it becomes much less of a scary thing. I remember my friend Nebush, who I'm working with right now, I remember we were, I think, like 2 or 3 beers in a bar, and I remember him explaining to me mining in blockchain. And at that point, I said, so everybody does everything again? And he said, yes. And I was like, that is dumb. And that was like 2 years back in the blockchain space. So I think it's just a bunch of concepts which are actually quite easy, but there's just a lot of them. So just start reading stuff. There's so much materials online. Go to your local meetups, or now don't go, watch your local meetups. But basically, just start reading. I think the main barrier is that people kind of feel paralyzed, but the thing they should just do is start, and they will see that it's actually not that hard. So. And you can also participate not only as a developer. I mean, there's so big of a need for resources for newcomers and everything else. So you can literally learn about the concept, write the blog post. Somebody else will read it, and they will understand it. So that's a huge help with the industry as well.
So, like within your own personal network, how many people do you know that are non-developers?
So I actually had a lot of them. Actually, there are a lot of designers, for example. But the most interesting person I met is actually a lawyer who is doing his master's thesis, and he wanted to how can people use smart contracts to have like international agreements and stuff like that. So basically, we sat down for a coffee, and he started with, okay, I'm not a developer. I think I don't understand this. And then I told him, okay, tell me what you understand so far. And he, as a lawyer, understood it much better than a bunch of developers I actually know. So it's just because it's his area of interest. And I said, like, how did you learn it? He just said, I read a bunch of stuff, and that's it. So a lot of people who learn it either from other people or just from reading it. So. According to some statistic, I don't know who said it, I think we're like the 5th biggest country for blockchain developers per capita. I don't know how true or false that is, but there are actually a couple of meetups, I think like 6 or 7 in Belgrade only. There are a bunch of crypto meetups, not that many blockchain meetups. So as you mentioned, people usually confuse the two. I mean, because it has been advertised like that on TV, on the internet, etc. But the community itself, I mean, we have, for example, Bitcoin and Ethereum ATMs around the city, where you actually have people. So I remember when the Bitcoin craze was big, like when it was $20-something thousand. I saw people like age 60-something, 70-something going to the ATMs and buying. So I think the community is there. It's not that big, for example, than in Asia or Berlin, stuff like that, but it's definitely growing. So for Tenderly, do follow @Tenderly app. There we tweet a lot about new features and interesting stuff. So when interesting stuff happens on Ethereum, we have these analysis tweets, and I think they're interesting. And if you want to follow me, it's at Bogdan, Habic.
Nice one.